Welcome to the new video of NeuroPhilos. Get ready to dive into a gripping tale that will leave you breathless, thinking, and inspired. Whether you're here for the mystery, the drama, or the unexpected twists, you're in the right place. Make sure to hit that like button, drop a comment, and subscribe so you never miss another powerful story. Let's begin. Life lived from the neck up. At some quiet point in modern life, something subtle shifted. It became normal, expected even, to live almost entirely inside the mind. An entire generation now spends its days thinking about thinking, replaying past conversations, rehearsing future disasters, breaking down every social interaction long after it has ended. The mind rarely rests. It scans, predicts, evaluates, corrects. Meanwhile, the body stays still. People wake up, move through routines, work, talk, scroll, sleep, yet often with a strange sense of distance, as if life is happening one step away from them, as if they are watching themselves exist rather than actually being here. They function, they perform, they comply, and they call this living. But something essential is missing. The body, once the center of experience, has been reduced to a background object, a container, a machine that carries the brain from one task to the next. Sensations are dulled or ignored. Fatigue is overridden. Emotions are postponed. Hunger, tension, restlessness. These signals are treated as interruptions rather than information. So people think instead. Thinking feels productive. Thinking feels safe. Thinking creates the illusion of control. If you can analyze enough, anticipate enough, prepare enough, maybe nothing will hurt you again. Maybe nothing will surprise you. Maybe nothing will slip through. This constant mental activity is often praised. We call it intelligence, self-awareness, ambition. We say someone is deep, rational, in their head. Rarely do we stop to ask what this endless thinking might be protecting them from. Psychiatrist Bessel Kolk, whose work reshaped how we understand trauma, offers an uncomfortable possibility. What many people experience as overthinking, anxiety, or hyperrationality may not be a preference or habit at all. It may be dissociation. Dissociation is not dramatic. It doesn't always look like losing time or identity. Often it looks like living entirely in the mind while the body fades into the background. It is a quiet withdrawal from sensation, a distancing from feeling, a subtle escape from the present moment. According to Kolk, this isn't a flaw, it's an adaptation. At some point, for many people, being fully present in the body became overwhelming. Maybe the pain was too intense. Maybe emotions weren't safe to express. Maybe stress never stopped long enough for the nervous system to recover. So the mind learned a strategy: leave the body behind. Thinking became refuge. Over time, this escape hardened into a way of being. The person learns to live from the neck up. The body becomes numb, distant, or vaguely uncomfortable. The mind takes full control, constantly narrating, interpreting, planning. Life turns into an internal monologue rather than a lived experience. And the strange part is that this state can feel normal, even superior. Being in your head is often rewarded in modern culture. Stillness, sensitivity, slowness, these are treated as weaknesses. Feeling deeply is seen as inefficiency. Pausing is treated like falling behind. So people stay busy, mentally busy, emotionally guarded, bodily disconnected. They walk, talk, work, and socialize while feeling oddly unreal, as if watching a movie of their own life, as if something important is happening just out of reach. They sense that time is passing, but they're not fully inside it. This is the hidden cost of living in the mind. And it raises a disturbing question. What if the mind that never stops thinking isn't brilliant, but fleeing? What if constant analysis isn't depth, but distance? What if this way of living isn't engagement, but survival? Because thinking can explain life, but it cannot replace living it. And until the body is brought back into the picture, something essential will always feel missing, no matter how much the mind tries to compensate. When the body learns that feeling is dangerous, to understand why so many people live almost entirely in their heads, it's necessary to let go of a comforting myth. The idea that overthinking is simply a habit, a personality trait, or a lack of discipline. According to Bessel Kolk, the root of this disconnection is rarely excess intellect. More often it is fear, learned, embodied, and unresolved. Dissociation begins when the body no longer feels like a safe place to inhabit. Trauma does not need to arrive as a single catastrophic event. It can emerge quietly over time. Emotional neglect, chronic stress, constant criticism, humiliation without relief, living for years without feeling seen, protected, or allowed to express distress. In these conditions, the nervous system adapts in the only way it knows how. It learns to escape. When sensations become associated with pain, shame, or helplessness, the organism enters survival mode. The body, once a source of guidance and connection, turns into a field of threat. Breathing tightens, muscles brace, the chest constricts, the stomach knots. Being present becomes unbearable, so the mind intervenes. Thinking feels safer than feeling. Analyzing feels safer than sensing. Planning feels safer than being here. Kolk observed this pattern repeatedly in traumatized patients. They were aware of what was happening around them, yet felt strangely absent from it. Emotions were distant, sensations muted. Life felt unreal, as though it were being observed from behind a glass wall. They knew they were alive, but they did not feel alive. This is not a malfunction, it is intelligent adaptation. The brain is designed to protect integrity. When the body becomes associated with danger, the mind takes over as a form of refuge. Dissociation is not weakness. It is the nervous system doing exactly what it evolved to do: preserve survival when escape is impossible. The problem is that the nervous system does not track time the way the rational mind does. What was learned in a moment of threat continues long after the threat has passed. The body remains on alert or collapses into numbness. The mind stays hyperactive, scanning for risks, trying to control outcomes, avoiding sensations that once felt overwhelming. What once saved the individual slowly becomes a cage. Unprocessed emotions do not disappear. They are stored in muscles that never fully relax, in shallow breathing, in digestive tension, in heart rate that jumps without warning. To come back into the body would mean encountering this raw material, and the organism resists. Mental imprisonment feels safer than emotional exposure. Over time, this disconnection becomes normalized. The person begins to mistake dissociation for identity. I'm just rational. I don't get emotional. I overthink everything. But the body keeps demanding its price: diffuse anxiety with no clear cause, a sense of emptiness, difficulty experiencing pleasure, sudden panic attacks, the persistent feeling of not being fully alive. Kolk emphasizes a crucial point. Trauma does not live in the story we tell. It lives in the sensations we avoid. This is why insight alone is often not enough. Understanding what happened does not automatically restore presence. Dissociation cannot be reasoned away. The mind may understand that the danger is over. The body does not believe it yet, and so the cycle continues. The mind dominates to prevent feeling. Feeling remains frozen to avoid collapse. Life is lived in thought rather than in experience. This reframes modern suffering entirely. Overthinking stops being a cognitive flaw and becomes a signal. Not a question of, how do I stop thinking so much? But what did my body learn was too dangerous to feel? But this process does not happen in isolation. Individual dissociation is not only formed by personal history, it is reinforced, rewarded, and amplified by the world we live in. A world that consistently teaches us that thinking is valuable and feeling is not. And that is where the story must go next. A culture that teaches us to leave the body. Dissociation does not develop in a vacuum. Even when it begins as a response to personal pain, it is sustained and normalized by the environment that surrounds us. Modern culture does not merely tolerate disconnection from the body, it quietly rewards it. To live primarily in the mind is not seen as a problem. It is often treated as a virtue. From an early age, we are trained to prioritize thinking over feeling. Children are told not to cry, not to be dramatic, not to react so strongly. Emotional expression is corrected before it is understood. By adolescence, desire is shamed, vulnerability is mocked, and sensitivity is framed as weakness. By adulthood, endurance is praised above all else. Ignore your limits. Push through fatigue. Stay productive. The body becomes something to manage, discipline, and optimize rather than listen to. This mindset is deeply rooted in the legacy of Cartesian dualism, the belief that the mind and body are separate, with the mind placed above the body. Consciousness, morality, and intelligence are assumed to live in thought, while the body is reduced to instinct, chaos, and unreliability. Even today, this framework shapes education, medicine, psychology, and spirituality. We are taught to ask, what are you thinking? Rarely, what are you feeling in your body right now? Traditional medicine often treats the body as a machine made of parts. Psychology frequently treats the mind as isolated software. When someone suffers, the focus turns to explanations, diagnoses, and narratives. Sensation is sidelined. The living experience of the body is overlooked. Yet as Bessel van der Kolk reminds us, the body is where life actually unfolds. Emotions are not abstract ideas. They are physical events. Sadness tightens the chest. Fear contracts the throat. Anger heats the skin. Intuition is felt in the stomach before it becomes a thought. Pleasure is vibration, warmth, movement. And still, we live as if thinking about these things is enough. Technology intensifies this divide. Screens demand constant cognitive engagement while requiring almost no bodily participation. We communicate without touch, socialize without presence, receive validation without connection. The mind accelerates while the body remains still, locked into fixed postures, shallow breathing, and minimal movement. This imbalance has consequences. Being busy has become a status symbol. Productivity is rewarded. Performance is monetized. Rest is something to justify. Stillness is suspicious. Even self-care is often reduced to distraction, consumption rather than presence. Scrolling, binge-watching, or numbing behaviors are sold as relaxation, yet none of them require being in the body. They anesthetize instead of reconnect. As a result, we lose fluency in sensation. We stop recognizing hunger until it becomes exhaustion. We miss tension until it turns into pain. We confuse numbness with calm. When the entire culture is dissociated, disconnection feels normal. Those who slow down, feel deeply, or prioritize presence are often seen as weak, unproductive, or unrealistic. And the cost is visible everywhere. Rising rates of anxiety, depression, burnout, insomnia, and existential emptiness are not personal failures. They are symptoms of a life lived without embodiment. A society that exists primarily in the mind begins to suffer collectively. Van der Kolk warns that living exclusively in thought is living in simulation. Thinking about life is not the same as living it. When the body's ignored, experience becomes shallow, fragmented, and unstable. You can function for years without realizing that something essential is missing. This is how dissociation becomes invisible. You can perform an entire life, career, relationships, routines, without ever fully inhabiting yourself. But culture alone is not the strongest force pulling us away from the body. There is another factor, quieter yet relentless, that accelerates this split every day. Continuous digital stimulation keeps the mind activated and the body forgotten. To understand how deeply this shapes modern disconnection, we must look directly at the role of screens, information overload, and constant mental noise. That is where the next chapter begins. The hyperstimulated mind and the forgotten body. We live in an age where the mind is almost never allowed to rest. From the moment the day begins, attention is pulled outward, towards screens, alerts, messages, news, videos, metrics, and endless streams of information. Mental stimulation is constant, uninterrupted, and normalized. What was once occasional is now continuous. This state feels ordinary, but it is not neutral. The human nervous system was never designed to process this level of input without pause. While the mind jumps from stimulus to stimulus, the body remains largely motionless, disconnected, and ignored. Eyes absorb data, fingers scroll, breath becomes shallow, muscles freeze into static postures. Presence disappears. What we call digital life is often a chronic state of somatic absence. You can spend hours consuming content about health, psychology, or spirituality, and still never feel your own body even once. The mind travels everywhere while the body stays behind. This is dissociation in its modern form, physically present, existentially absent. Bessel van der Kolk points out that trauma does not always require a single overwhelming event. Prolonged stress, sensory overload, and the absence of recovery can fragment experience just as effectively. When the nervous system is kept in a constant state of alert, there is no space for emotions to complete their natural cycles. Sensations accumulate without resolution. Digital environments reinforce this imbalance. Infinite scrolling delivers rapid bursts of stimulation that hook attention but never satisfy it. The brain becomes accustomed to quick rewards while the body remains unstimulated, underused, and unheard. Silence, boredom, and stillness, essential conditions for internal awareness, are eliminated. Comparison adds another layer of disconnection. Curated images and edited lives replace direct sensation. The image becomes more important than the felt experience. Instead of asking, "How do I feel?" people ask, "How do I appear?" The body becomes something to display rather than inhabit. There is also a physical cost. Every screen-based activity demands stillness, forward focus, and minimal movement. Breathing becomes shallow. The neck tightens. The spine collapses. This creates a paradox. The mind is pushed into overdrive while the body is held back, like revving an engine with the brakes engaged. Over time, this state produces mental fatigue, emotional depletion, and a growing sense of unreality. People feel wired and exhausted at the same time, anxious but numb, overstimulated yet empty. They search for answers in more information, more content, more thinking, deepening the cycle that caused the problem. Van der Kolk emphasizes a crucial truth. Healing from dissociation cannot be achieved through cognition alone. Insight is valuable, but it does not restore embodiment. The body must be directly involved in the process of reconnection. Safety, pleasure, and presence must be felt, not understood. But as long as life is mediated by screens, algorithms, and constant mental demand, returning to the body feels difficult, even threatening. The digital world offers a simulation of connection without the vulnerability of real presence. It promises engagement while bypassing sensation. The most concerning aspect is that this pattern now affects nearly everyone. Children grow up immersed in screens before they understand their own emotions. Teenagers live entire emotional lives online while their bodies remain unexplored territory. Adults identify more with schedules, profiles, and productivity than with their physical experience. Dissociation in this context is no longer an exception. It is the default. This leads to an urgent question. If the mind is constantly stimulated and the body consistently ignored, how can reconnection begin? How do we break the cycle without rejecting modern life altogether? The answer does not begin with dramatic transformation. It begins with something deceptively simple: noticing sensation, feeling weight, recognizing breath, naming what is happening inside the body right now. This is where the path turns, because before anyone can fully return to life, they must first return to feeling. Returning to the body, returning to life. There is a question so simple that it is often overlooked, yet so powerful that it can interrupt years of mental imprisonment. Where do you feel this in your body? For many people living with anxiety, rumination, or emotional numbness, this question feels unfamiliar, even unsettling. And that reaction alone reveals how far the mind has traveled from the body. According to Bessel van der Kolk, emotions are not thoughts. They are physical events. Fear tightens the chest. Sadness weighs on the shoulders. Anger heats the face and fists. Anxiety vibrates through the stomach and breath. Yet in a culture that prioritizes explanation over experience, these sensations are ignored or translated immediately into analysis. When that happens, the body loses its voice. The act of noticing and naming sensations is not symbolic. It is neurological. When physical experience is brought into awareness, parts of the brain responsible for regulation and integration become active. The nervous system begins to shift out of survival mode. The mind slows because it no longer needs to flee. This is the foundation of somatic healing. Many people believe they are describing feelings when they are actually describing thoughts. "I'm stressed because I have a meeting tomorrow" is not an emotion. It is a story. The real experience lives beneath it. Tight breathing, pressure in the chest, restlessness in the legs. When attention moves from explanation to sensation, something changes. The experience becomes concrete, present, and workable. Kolk emphasizes that trauma is stored in the body, not as memory alone, but as unresolved physiological states. These states cannot be released through insight alone. They must be felt, recognized, and allowed to move. Healing begins not with understanding the past, but with sensing the present. However, for those who have lived disconnected for a long time, feeling can be frightening. If the body once held pain, shame, or terror, returning to it may feel unsafe. This is why reconnection must begin gently, with grounding. Grounding is not abstract. It is biological. It brings attention to direct sensory input. The pressure of feet on the ground, the temperature of the air, the texture of an object in the hand, the rhythm of breathing. These sensations communicate safety to the nervous system. They tell the body, I am here and I am not in danger. Simple practices, pressing your feet into the floor, touching something cold, holding a solid object, noticing sounds can interrupt dissociation in real time. They anchor awareness back into the body when the mind starts to spiral or detach. What appears small is, in fact, profound. As grounding becomes familiar, the body begins to tolerate more sensation. Energy that was frozen by dissociation slowly returns. This often leads to a natural desire for movement, not forced exercise, but conscious movement. Walking, stretching, yoga, dance, martial arts, anything that requires presence and coordination between sensation and action. Movement reorganizes emotion, it restores trust. It reminds the nervous system that the body is not a battlefield, but a place that can hold intensity without collapsing. When the body becomes inhabitable again, life changes in subtle but fundamental ways. Anxiety softens because there is a place to land. Intuition becomes audible because it is bodily by nature. Relationships deepen because presence replaces performance. Pleasure returns not as excess, but as aliveness. Healing does not mean erasing trauma. It means integrating it, allowing it to exist without dominating the present. As Kolk wrote, healing is not about forgetting what happened, but about being fully alive now. The mind is a powerful tool, but it was never meant to be a home. The body is where life unfolds. And the moment you return to it, even briefly, you step out of survival and back into existence.